Alright, so we're going to show you how to make this Iman Ghadzi style animation. But before we hop into it, let's look at the example that we're going to recreate. So as you can see, it's a full screen animation with some pop-ups and a brain coming in. And we're going to show you how to exactly recreate this. The great thing about this, there are certain presets and assets that we use that Iman Ghadzi does for all of his videos. And you can take these exact effects and assets and put it into any other video that you're going to create in the future. Now, before we hop into this animation, if you're looking to fully edit like Iman Ghadzi or Ali Abdaal, or even the videos I created for myself and my clients that has gotten millions of views on social media, then sign up on the waitlist to join our program that will show you exactly how to be an advanced level editor and animator, where you'll acquire the skills to be able to work with top level influencers like Iman, Ali Abdaal, or even top social brands. The creator economy is just getting started, and people are searching for the best editors out there to fuel their content engine. I literally get hundreds of DMs a week of people asking me for editors. But in order to make 5 to 20K a month editing from your laptop anywhere in the world, you need that advanced level animation and editing skills to be able to do so. My company and even myself have the opportunity to work with top level influencers, celebrities, and social brands. And we did this while earning up to $70,000 a month. So we're gonna show you everything that we know when it comes to editing and animation and acquiring clients that are willing to pay you. So if you want to learn how to edit and animate like Iman Ghadzi or Ali Abdaal, or even develop your own unique style, go to the link in the description and sign up for the waitlist. We're only accepting a very small amount of students in this first cohort, as we want to make sure that everyone succeeds going through this program and is linked up with a top influencer that's willing to pay 5 to 10K a month. So spots are very limited. Sign up on the waitlist to know when the program will be released. Now with that, let's get into recreating this animation. All right, so I have a new comp here, which is 1920 by 1080. We're just gonna start off with creating the background. To do this, we want to right click over here, create new, solid, and then just hit OK. We're gonna go ahead and put a gradient on this. So we're gonna look up gradient, and we're gonna go over under generate gradient map and throw this onto our solid background. You can see a gradient has appeared. So we're gonna choose the start color and make this like a dark red, like really dark red, almost black, and then hit OK. For the white, we're gonna change this to more of a lighter red, something around right here, A31C1C. If you are following along, you type that in, and then we're gonna hit OK. What we wanna do now is have a grid on the background. So what I'm gonna do is right click over here, do new, adjustment layer, and I'm gonna look up grid here on the effects and presets window. Under generate, we see grid. I'm gonna drag that onto my adjustment layer. A grid pops up. We wanna change the blending mode to add. That's gonna get rid of the black. I'm gonna go over to corner, drag this in a little bit, and then drag the other one out to get more of a square look here. And then we wanna change the stroke width, which is the border here, to around 3. And then what we actually wanna do, since we have this color as white, we wanna make it almost like this whitish red here, and then I'm gonna hit OK. And then we want to turn the opacity down. So I'm gonna hit T on my keyboard to bring up opacity and change this to right about 24%. And there we go. Now we have our background. I'm gonna go up to my shape tool, do rounded rectangle, and then I'm gonna hold down Shift as I drag out here to make it a square. What we want to do is go over to shape properties, add a stroke to it, make sure it's white, add a fill color to it, but we want to change it to this blackish gray here. We don't want to make it too gray, but we don't want to make it too black. And I'm actually going to take the stroke width down to 2. That looks pretty good. Next thing to do is round off the edges a little bit more. Bring this round to 55, looks good. And then we're going to turn the opacity down. Opacity is way turned down on this. And one thing I'm noticing is actually there's a gradient. So I'm gonna change this fill color to radial gradient. I'm gonna select this to go into the gradient properties. Right now it looks pretty good. So we wanna make this black on the left and then make this a little bit of a gray. And you should get this effect here where it looks a little bit lighter on the outside and is darker to the middle. I'm just gonna adjust the opacity again. I think it could be a little bit lighter, so 45% looks good. Then the next thing we're gonna do is add that circle shape that's in it. So I'm gonna go back up to my shape tool and do ellipse, and I'm gonna click and drag to make a perfect circle by holding Shift. And what we're gonna do here is get rid of the fill. So I'm gonna change it to none. Let's change the stroke to 4. And that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna just drag it in the middle here and resize it. So I'm clicking on the corner here and holding Shift so it stays a uniform size. And I think even bringing the stroke up to 5 will work here. So it already looks pretty good. And then we need to add our text in it. So I'm just gonna hit the text tool here on the top left, type 1. I'm using the Europa Grotesque font. It's a good font to use. It looks pretty similar to Iman's. And I'm just gonna scale this up a tad bit and drag it into the middle here, and then make sure it's on top. Scale it up a little bit more so it's fitting in there nicely. Alright, so now that we have this pretty much complete, I'm just gonna adjust some things here. It's aligning in the middle a little bit better. I even think the circle could be turned down a little bit, so I'm just gonna go into scale it down just a tad, and bring it to the center here. Next thing to do is add the glow effect before we start getting into animation. So I'm gonna look up glow in the effects and presets on the right window here. And we wanna do stylized glow. And I'm gonna drag that onto the shape layer in the back first and adjust the settings. So right around glow radius 10, glow intensity probably 8.9. And then I'm gonna copy this and bring it over to the other 2 layers here. There we go, we got that glow. It still seems a little bit off. So to align this, I'm actually just gonna drag this in the middle of the grid here just so I could easily align and put everything in the middle here so it looks good. There we go. So now it's all aligned. Next thing to do is add that VR glitch. So I'm just gonna look up glitch, and we see VR digital glitch. I'm gonna throw that on the 1 here. And the settings we wanna mess with, we wanna turn down the master amplitude to 50. Go into distort, change the color, 80 here, and then bring everything else down to 0. And I'm gonna change the master amplitude up just a little bit more, all the way to 100, and now we're getting that little effect here. It's very subtle, but it's something that adds to it. And then we can copy this VR digital glitch, Command C, and put it on to the rest of our layers here. So with the background one, it's a little too much. So I'm just gonna click into it and turn the amplitude down just a very tiny bit. Next is to add a little bit of that jitter to it. So I'm gonna look up turbulent displace. I'm gonna bring that onto the 1. Obviously it doesn't look good. I'm gonna bring the size down to 2. And then I'm just gonna adjust the amount to where it looks something decent. So 26 looks pretty good. So we're gonna copy this and bring it onto our other layers here, Command V. Now we need to get into creating the other ones, but before we do that, I'm actually gonna animate this circle here to make life a little bit easier for when we copy and paste it to make these 6 other. I'm gonna click on the drop down. Right here, you'll see add. So what I'm gonna do is click and hold this and go over to trim paths. Then we're gonna hit the drop down for trim paths. We're gonna make a keyframe for end. I'm gonna drag it to the right, and then we're gonna change this to 0. Then we have that circle appearing there. To make this a little bit smoother, I'm gonna highlight both of these keyframes, right click, go to keyframe assistant, easy ease, and then also go to the graph editor and move this to the left here. I think the speed is pretty good with that. And now we're ready to create our other little icons here, just the 6 of them. So I'm gonna highlight everything that I have here first. I'm gonna move it to the left. So I'm gonna highlight everything here, hit Command D to duplicate everything. Then take this layer while everything's still highlighted, take the bottom layer and drag to the top. So we're kind of organizing on our timeline here. And then I'm gonna click and hold, and then also hold down Shift to move this to the right. And what that's gonna do is gonna keep it on the same path. All we need to do is change this number to 2. And then we wanna make sure this is in the middle as well. And then we're gonna repeat those exact same steps for the next 6. Okay, so we have all of our little icon things here, but we need to move them to the left because it's obviously not center of screen. So what we're gonna do is just highlight everything here, click and hold Shift to keep it on that same plane, but move it to the left so we get it right in the middle here. I'm also using this grid to line up where it should be, which is a good thing. All right, so now if we play things back, okay, so now that we have everything lined here, we need to then get it into the animation portion of it. First, what we're gonna do is actually pre-compose all of our icons here individually. So I'm gonna go right click, pre-compose, and I'm gonna call this icon 6. And we're gonna do that for the rest of them as well and label them correctly. Okay, so now that we have all of them pre-composed, it's time to get into the animation portion of it. So we're just going to work with the first icon here and animating that, and then we can copy that animation over to the other icons. So I'm going to do the drop down here on icon 1, go to transform, and make sure you have the 3D thing toggled here so we can manipulate it in a 3D universe. So what I'm going to do is make a keyframe for the X orientation, and I'm going to move that all the way to the right because that's where I want it to be once it's done animating. I'm going to manipulate the X so that it's almost flat here. -65 is pretty good. I'm going to highlight these two keyframes, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and then go over to the graph and manipulate it how we normally do it. We need to add a little bit of rotation to it now. So what I'm going to do is make a keyframe for the Y rotation, drag that keyframe to align with the other keyframe we have. So what I'm going to do is make a keyframe for the Y rotation, drag that to align with the other keyframe we have, kind of put it off axis a little bit here, and it should be good. And then we're going to ease that in as well and change the graph to it. From there, it's not really on axis how we want it to be. We want to actually move the position of it. So I'm just going to keyframe position, move that to the right. But since we messed with the 3D rotation of it, it's kind of putting it higher on frame in the beginning. So I'm just going to drag it to the bottom here, and we're going to play this back. So it looks a little weird. I think we need to add these keyframe easy ease to it. And we are going to make that graph like that, and it should look pretty good from there. Last thing to do is manipulate the opacity of it. So I'm going to make a keyframe opacity, bring that to the right. So by the time that's all the way animated in, we want it at 100%. And then I'm going to manipulate this one to be 0% in the beginning. We have our animation. Now we can go ahead and apply these animations to all the other ones that are coming in. So I'm going to highlight everything. And then what we can do is make sure our playhead's at the beginning. So what I'm going to do here is then highlight everything. Make sure 3D is checked off for them, because if it's not, then things won't copy over how we want it to. So then now that they are checked off, I'm just going to hit Command V, and we should watch it back now. So there we go. We have everything coming up nicely. The only thing to do is just stagger these because we don't want them to all appear at the same time. We want them to appear in a row. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames out and drag the next one over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Drag this one over, and I'm going to do the rest as well. Each having in that 5 frame interval. There we go. And then we can watch this back. All right, so it looks pretty good. They're all coming in at a different time here. It could be a little bit more staggered. I think I'm going to go by 10 here, 10 frames in between. All right, cool. That looks a lot better. Next thing I'm going to do is make the animation of that brain coming up. But there's some things that we need to finish up with this because we have to have it move up on the frame. So I'm going to pre-compose everything here, all of our icon animations, And then what I'm going to do, I think it needs to be scaled down just a tad so it fits on the frame a little bit better. Looks nice like that. Now we have to move these up and then have the brain come up. And to do that, what we're going to do is right around when the 6 comes up right here, we're going to create a keyframe for the position, and then we're going to move our playhead to the right and drag it up a little bit, probably right about here. And we're going to highlight both these keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and go to the graph editor and move that to the left and watch back. So it's a little quick. I'm going to drag this to the right. That's a lot better. The one thing to do is then make these, the middle ones, a little bit bigger while the other ones get a little smaller. So I'm going to go back into this icon animation comp. And what we're going to do is for number 3, for icon 3 and 4, we're going to make them bigger. So right when they peer up and they start to animate up into the frame, up here in the frame, we are going to make them bigger. So we have to find out the correct timing. So I'm going to go back to our original comp. And right when it gets about here in this comp, that's when we want to have these get a little bit bigger to maintain the same playhead or the same spot. So to maintain this area and knowing when to actually animate these a little bit bigger, don't move your playhead, keep it there, and all you have to do is click back into the comp, and it's going to be at the right point within the comp. The playhead's going to stay at the same timing. And now we can hit the S key for scale, make a keyframe there, and then drag the playhead to the right a little bit and make this a tad bit bigger. I'm going to pull up the all of the transforming. I'm going to go back to the beginning and also hit one for the position, make a keyframe there. And once this gets fully scaled, I want it to move to the right just a tad bit. It should be good. So it's having a little issues because these are easy in, or easy ease. So I'm just gonna change this to linear. And then what we can do from there is do easy ease. Same thing for number 4. I'm just gonna copy these keyframes, make sure my playhead is at the right position. Go to icon number 4 and pull up transform and then Command V to paste. So the positioning is going to be a little bit off. The only thing we have to manipulate is where it ends up. So I'm going to move it to the right a little bit. Should be good. And then what we can do too is for the 2 and 5, we can make them scale up a little bit as well. So I'm going to bring my playhead to when 3 and 4 start scaling up. And I'm going to go over to 5, pull up transform, make a keyframe for scale, drag it out a little bit. Or for number 3 here, I'm going to pull up where the keyframes end so we can align everything. And then I'm going to manipulate the scale for number 5 here. We don't want it as big, just slightly bigger. And then we also have to move the positioning. So I'm going to go back to the first keyframe, make a keyframe for positioning, then go back to my last keyframe there and move it to the left a little bit. What we then need to do is change this top keyframe to a linear. So what you do is keyframe interpolation, go over to linear, and it should be okay. From there, I'm going to highlight both of them, keyframe assistance, easy ease, and then we could copy these keyframes here and do the exact same thing for number 2. So I'm going to open this up and paste these in, make sure they're copied, paste, and the only thing we need to change on this is the positioning of it. Probably right about there is pretty good. I think that's it. So now that we go back and replay this, they get a little bit bigger and it's time to bring in our brain. So if you guys want to use a good area to find a lot of great assets, I suggest using Envato. This is where I'm pulling the brain asset from. And the beautiful thing about this is Envato has a 3D section. You can manipulate a lot of the assets they have in 3D, which is really cool. So we have this brain, and I want it to turn it like that and then download it from there. And it's going to download just like that as a PNG with no background on it. So this is really simple. Recommend using Envato elements in their 3D section for sure. So now that I have this brain asset, I'm going to drag it onto our project timeline here. First thing I'm going to do is scale it down, probably right about there. I want to see when everything kind of pops up. Scale it up just a tad bit more. Make sure it's in the middle. So this is right around the area, right when this starts to come up, I want the brain to come up. So I'm going to drag my layer to the right here, make sure it's in line with this keyframe. So that's when it starts moving up. And that's when I want to start moving the brain up. So I'm going to pull up position here. I'm going to make a keyframe. I'm going to move it all the way to the right to align with this keyframe here. And then I'm going to move this to the bottom of the frame where we can't see it anymore. Highlight both these keyframes, right click, keyframe assistance, easy ease. Go over to the graph editor, make it like that, manipulate the graph so it moves in faster and it finishes slower. So that looks great already. Next thing to add to this brain is a black and white filter. So I'm just looking up black and white. Under color correction, I'm going to drag that onto the brain. Automatically it goes black and white. I'm going to manipulate the reds a little bit, kind of turn it down, get a little bit more contrast in there. And then the tint color, I'm going to check this off and I'm going to change the tint color to this like reddish, grayish tint, almost where it's like you could barely see the red in it. You can see more gray than red. So right around here in this area should look good. The next thing to do is add the lines that come from each of the icons to the brain. To do this, we're going to go over to the pen tool and start with number 1 and just kind of make a little squiggly line here. It doesn't have to be anything, perfect. And then to change this to a dotted line, what we're going to do is go into the shape layer, go into contents, shape 1, stroke. And then once we're in stroke, we're going to go over to dashes here and hit plus. And that's going to add some dashes to it. And we can manipulate the dashes by turning it up, making them a little bit bigger or a little bit more spread it out. And then we could also just turn up the stroke a little bit. So it's on 5 right now. I'm going to turn it up to, let's do 15. That should be good. And then let's change the dashes a little bit, a little too much dashes. So I think around 22 is a good spot. And then I'm going to turn this down a little bit to 13. Keep the stroke at 13. That looks pretty good. The next thing we need to do is then animate this stroke coming about. So we want it to start pretty much right here. So I'm going to drag this layer to the right. I'm going to hit add right here under contents and do trim path. So now that we have trim path, what we then need to do is create a keyframe for end, move this to the right, and then keep it as 0 here in the beginning. Now if we play this back, it's a little too slow. So we're going to make this faster, and then we're also going to add some ease and ease to it and manipulate the graph just like this. That looks a lot better. What we can do is copy these and paste them to the other strokes that we're going to be adding to this. So I'm going to take my pen tool and go about it in the same way where I'm just making a little line here. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. I'm going into contents and adjusting the stroke, changing it to a dash stroke, changing this to 13, and then the dashes to 22. And then we get the same effect there. Next thing to do is add the animation to the beginning of it. Since we copied the other one, we can just go ahead and paste this, and there we go. I'm going to do the exact same thing, the exact same method for all the other strokes here, and I'll speed this part up for you guys. So the next thing we want to do, since we have all of these strokes animated out, is we want to apply that glow effect to them. To do this, I'm going to apply the exact same glow effect we did to the icons here. So all we have to do is just go into our icons, any one of them, and just copy this glow and VR glitch effect from it. So Command C, and go back to our regular comp, highlight all these, and Command V. So what I'm noticing is the VR glitch is a little too much on them. So I'm just going to take the master amplitude and turn it down to probably around 30. And I'm going to go to every single one and turn them to 30. Okay, so now that we have the glow on them, the animation is almost complete. We just need to add text in the middle that pops up. So to do that, we're going to go back to our ellipse tool, go to rounded rectangle. So to do that, we're going to go back to our shape tool, go to rounded rectangle, and just drag this out to right about here. Then in the property side, shape properties, we are going to increase the stroke just a tad bit. I think 13 is good. And then the fill color, we want this nice bright red, so we're going to change it to solid, and it's already on a nice red for us, so we're going to use that. And then change the roundness to 50, so the sides are completely round. I'm just going to turn the stroke down to 8 here, actually. That looks pretty good. So before we animate this, we want to create the text for it. Get the text tool and click here, and I'm going to type something different from what Iman has. So I'm just going to call it fix your brain. I want to put this text up top, so it's not covered by anything. I'm going to change the font to Ribbon. This is a font that we give you in our course. So if you want this, you might be able to find it online, but we give you these assets in our course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just change the fix part, keep that at bold, and then keep the your brain at something like light here, or even extra light might be better. We'll keep it at thin. Then we're going to scale this down. So now the next thing to do is scale this down to make sure it fits within our little background border. And just going to put it in the middle here. One thing that we can add to it is that turbulent displace to make the edges less smoother. So I'm going to drag that on to our text, change this to 2, the size to 2, and then the amount, I'm just going to manipulate it to where it looks pretty decent. So 30 looks pretty good. For the background, we need to add that glow effect onto it. So I'm just going to look up glow in the effects and preset window, stylize glow, throw that onto the background. So we're going to keep the intensity at 10. The radius to 44. Looks pretty good. And we could also throw that same turbulent displace effect onto the background here. And that looks pretty good. Next thing to do is animate this portion in. Okay, so we are going to animate the background first. I'm going to drag this background layer to the point where we want it to come in. So right about here is when we want it to come in. We're going to mess with the scale on this one. I'm going to unlink the scaling to it, click for a keyframe, drag this all the way to the right. And before we start animating, we actually want to change the anchor point of this. So that's in the middle, this background layer here. I don't know what you would call this placeholder. We want it in the middle, so when we scale it, it scales from the middle. I'll show you what I mean in a sec. So we put the positioning to where we had it before, and now we can manipulate the scale of it. So I'm going to hit S on my keyboard to bring up scale. Make sure this is unlinked, and we want to make sure that this is unlinked here, and create a keyframe in the beginning. Drag it all the way to the right, and then change the scaling from 0 on this side to then it's going to this 100 here. What we can do too is also highlight these keyframes, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and manipulate the graph so it comes in quicker and it's smooth at the end. And there we go. Now we're going to do the same thing with the text, except we're not going to scale it. We're just going to have it almost kind of like crop in. So to do this, what we are going to do is drag the text layer to where we want it to start coming in, which is at the same time as that placeholder or background, whatever we want to call that. I don't know what to call that. But I'm going to take the pen tool here and make sure that this layer is selected. I'm going to really zoom in here and create a rectangle. Make sure I'm not going over any text here. So it's going to disappear, but we want to change this the mask option to subtract. So anything that's going to be inside this rectangle is going to subtract. The next thing to do is mask the path. And I'm going to just drag my playhead all the way to where as soon as it is aligned with this background, and I'm going to take this, we're going to go over to our regular cursor, step out of it, go back in, and I'm going to just bring this all the way to the edge here, as well as this side. I'm going to bring it to the edge. So we play that back, it's disappearing. But what we actually want to do is change this to add so that anything inside of it is not going to appear. It's going way too quick, so what we need to do is highlight these keyframes, easy ease, and match that speed with the other keyframe. So still way too quick here. So I'm going to drag this to the right and hopefully it will line up. Go a little bit faster. That's good. And the last thing I'm going to do is just turn that feathering up a tad bit, probably to 33 or 31. So it just looks a little more natural coming in. And there we have it. Let's play it back to see what else needs to be done. One thing I'm actually noticing is the brain can be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go to my brain file here. We're going to go over to the resin, turn it back up. I think we just turned that down too much. Looks good like that at 42. Cool, so this is coming along pretty nice, but it still feels a little bit off. And this is where we get into the common effects that Iman uses. And you can save these as presets so you can bring this to any project to get what we're getting here. So first thing I'm going to do is go back to that turbulent displace. I'm going to put this on the grid layer, so the adjustment layer. Obviously it looks pretty crazy here. So we're going to turn the mount to 4 and turn the size down to 20. I'm going to turn the size to 2, and then we're going to just increase the mount so it gives it a little bit of that jagginess to it. So we got the turbulent displace down for that. Another thing that Iman has down here is a little bit of a gradient. So we're going to create that as well. So I'm going to right click here, go to new. I'm going to go to solid, or I want to make the color the same exact color as the red here on the edge. And we're going to hit OK. Then what I'm going to do is take my pen tool and I'm just going to make almost like this little U, and we're going to cut out the top. So we're going to go into the mask and change this to subtract. And then we're going to also add a big feather to it. And then what we can do here is drag this down a little bit. We need to change the feather just a tad bit more because it's messing up at the top. I'm going to take these way up so that none of the feathering gets into it. And there we go. I think turning down the opacity will also help. So I'm going to hit T to bring up opacity. Turn that down to, let's turn it to 70. It should look good. Okay, so another common thing that Iman uses is these grain overlays. If you want to get overlays like these are actually made from our team. Go ahead and put yourself on the wait list for our course. We will be teaching you how to do this plus more. And there's actually faster ways, like 10 times faster ways to do something like this using multiple programs, and we teach you on that. If you have just a basic understanding of video editing, then this course is meant for you. And we're going to take you to an advanced level editor and animator where you can actually make anywhere from 3 to 10K a month by animating for these top level influencers, celebrities, and businesses. And we're going to show you how to get them, and we're going to show you the skills you need in order to get clients like that. I've made $30,000 in a month just editing for people, and it's because I'm an advanced editor and I know how to edit for social media. So this course is going to teach you how to do all of this and way more. So if you're not on the waitlist, go to the link in bio, click the waitlist, join it, and we'll let you know when the course is going to be released. We're accepting a very small amount of students in this first time, and the price will increase in the future just because we want to get the most value, just because we want to give the most value to a select amount of people first and make sure that they succeed within the course, and then we'll release it again later. But it's going to be more. So make sure you're on that waitlist to be the first to get in the course. So I'm dragging this grain texture on. So since we have this grain placed on top, we need to change the blend mode of it. So sometimes you don't see the option to do that. All you have to do is come down here and hit toggle switches / mode, and it will bring up the spot where we can put the blend mode on it. It's hard to see, but it's right here is blend mode. And I'm just going to click this and change it to an add. Next thing to do is turn down the opacity. Probably going to just turn it to 25 and see how that looks. Okay, a little too much. Let's change it to 12. The key here is making this really subtle, so we'll see how this looks. So now there's just 2 more things we need to do to make it feel like an Iman Ghadzi video. This is the thing that Iman adds to all of his animations, or whoever edits his videos. They add this to pretty much every animation to keep things moving a little bit, and they just throw it on top of everything. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I always save this to the end as well, just because it kind of eats up your computer speed. This effect is the turbulent displace effect. So we're gonna go to effects and presets. We already have turbulent displace pulled up, and we're gonna throw this onto everything. So first I'm gonna do the background. So I'm gonna pre-compose the background here. And then we're gonna bring this turbulent displace effect onto it. And once we do it once, we could copy and paste it to everything. So now that we have this on it, I am gonna go ahead and change the amount to 4. The size to 20, and then we're going to make an expression here. So under evolution options, you see random seed. I'm going to hold down option on my keyboard and make sure my playhead's at the beginning, and then I'm going to create a keyframe by holding down option, and it's going to bring up this expressions area for us. We already see expression here, but we're going to change that. We're going to delete it first and type in time. Double click on time when that pulls up just to set it in stone, and then we're going to do a star or asterisk 7, and then you can click out of that. What that's going to do is it's going to keep it constantly moving like back and forth like that jitter effect, and we can apply this to everything now. So I'm going to copy this and literally apply this to everything because they add it to just about everything. Okay, now we can see that jitteriness to everything. Everything's just moving ever so slightly, and there's one more thing to do. You'll see Ali Abdal do this. Iman does it a lot, and that's adding a posterized time effect to it. So to do that, I'm just going to highlight everything. We can do it individually, and sometimes in certain scenarios you want to, but in this scenario, I'm going to do it all in one. So I'm going to pre-compose everything and just hit OK. And then we're going to go up to the effects and preset window and type in posterize, and you'll see posterize time under the time folder here. And I'm going to drag that on. And what this effect is doing, it's changing anything, let's say like from 30 frames per second to whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to change it to 16. So it's changing this footage from a natural 30 frames per second down to a 16. And you'll notice that it kind of has that jittering effect when things are being brought in. The reason why I always add this last to everything is because it just takes up a lot of the speed that's on your computer and really makes it slow. So before I export, I always add this last to give it that final effect. I'll play this back for you guys and, see what we just created. And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. We created 2 different types of animations that Iman Ghadzi does. Now, like I said before, if you want to learn how to do this a lot quicker, become way more advanced, so you're working with top influencers, celebrities, big businesses where you're making anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 a month, then join my course waitlist, and I'm going to show you how my team and I are able to do videos like this for social media for many big businesses, celebrities, and influencers. We're not going to let anything back. We're going to show you the advanced skills that you need to acquire these clients. And we're also going to show you the methods we use to acquire clients as well. These methods have allowed me to earn up to $70,000 a month. And we're going to be teaching you all of this. So put your name on the waitlist, follow that link in the description, and you'll have the opportunity to be on the waitlist. Once again, we're only accepting a very small amount of students in the beginning, and the price will go up in the future. So put yourself on that waitlist, and I hope to see you in another tutorial or in that course once it's released in a couple of weeks.